Robert Scott Bell Show.
All right, here we go again, cranking up another broadcast weekday week here on the Robert Scott Bell Show. And excuse me, I think that happens sometimes. I cough when I get emotional, and I don't know for sure. I've only been on this planet for a little over half a century, so I'm still trying to figure out what my body sometimes tried to tell me when I do that. First and foremost, we got a really amazing hour coming up in the second hour because Marjorie Wildcraft is finally joining us. She's been. We had to go through her people and her people. No, we all her plants. That's what we had to go through. But we're going to talk about wildcraft and getting your garden started if it hasn't already, and what to do with Marjorie Wildcraft. But as we crank up this broadcast hour, I didn't go to air with this, and now it's made full announcements and things. But we lost another beautiful soul along the way here. And if you go to the show notes at robertscottbell.com, you'll see an acknowledgement and announcement of our friend Annie Brandt from Best Answer for Cancer, a dear friend for many, many years. And, I was able to get to at least one, maybe two of them now. I don't even remember at this point. I think a couple of them, but just an extraordinary champion for health freedom and for the rights of people who are suffering with cancer to find methods that are more in line with their spirit, that are more aligned with the holistic options, working with or without doctors. But if you're going to work with a doctor, go into somebody who's at least integrated some level of natural medicine, something that is not just poison/burn, that kind of thing. And she passed away on April 26th of this year, and we're just now getting to the announcement now that's been, kind of put out there officially. And again, thank you to John Malanka from United Patients Group and Ann Fonfa from the Annie Appleseed Project for all your support for Annie Brandt over the years as well. And just, again, one of the sweetest ladies you'll ever meet in lifetimes. Just a golden heart. And it just, like I said, it saddens me to say goodbye to another friend like that. I know she's fine. I get that. When we talk about people passing from this place, it's only those of us who are left behind that really suffer, in my humble opinion, experience, or whatever you want to say it is. And Annie, with a golden heart, I know she's helping folks on the other side as well. And, I think about how she was alive for decades after she founded, a couple of decades or so after this was founded, around that time almost. If you see in the little note going back in, and you can go to the Best Answer for Cancer as well. Let me see if I can pull that page up. There it is. At the bestanswerforcancer.org, it's still up there. And if you go back to the About page there, it's a nonprofit that was established some years ago. And back in 2004, she had met Rachel Best about that time because they both had cancer and decided they didn't want to go conventionally. Now, unfortunately, Rachel, her friend, died in 2006, very soon after, from an infection, as they're going through a routine operation. But again, in a hospital setting, there are risks to just being there. And Annie took over the foundation as executive director since that point in time, and had been doing 2 times a year in often cases, and just amazing to see what she did. The sweetness, right, that she had to be able to put on major conferences and bringing doctors in from all over the world to present and learn and even get advanced, medical credits, if you will, continuing CMEs, continuing medical education credits. And that's not an easy thing to do. In 2011, the Best Answer for Cancer was accepted in the Integrative Medicine Consortium. Vision to make it integrative, that integrative medicine was a standard of care. Now, I recognize, as many of you do, that even what we call integrative cancer therapies are not all there or not all that. But I also recognize and acknowledge and support people's freedom to choose the kind of path they want in healing. And yes, some of you are hardcore, say, you know what, chemo, radiation, surgery, I want to avoid that at all costs. And I want to go completely what we call natural or organic, whatever. And yet there are doctors that are making the bridge to triage people that are in such bad shape that what would I say to them and about them? Except thank you for making an effort, at least, to try to transition yourself from Flexner Report views of the world. That is, cancer is evidence, for instance, of a lack of chemotherapy. Cancer is evidence of a lack of radiation. Cancer is evidence of a lack of surgical interventions. Now, she utilized something, and it kept her alive along with a lot of other holistic things she was doing, Annie. Insulin-potentiated chemotherapy, where you have low dose, and it was utilizing the opportunity, acknowledging that cancer is an obligate glucose metabolizer, to deliver things directly to cancer cells with less harm to other cells. Is that what I would do? Not necessarily, but I would support anybody in their efforts to do that instead of massively poisoning their body and playing a game of chemotherapeutic chicken. So it really was and is an advancement over mass poisoning. It's a little bit more targeted poisoning. Still, it's allopathic. I recognize that. But she was a champion for people from all backgrounds, from all walks, that wanted some other method, some other way to get well, considering the diagnosis was considered deadly. And as we know from our friends around the world, whether you agree or disagree with various things that they say, most people recognize now that are in this sphere that cancer is not necessarily a death sentence. Of course, my buddy Chris Barr, not a doc, was even at the Best Answer for Cancer, the one in San Diego. We're gonna be playing a clip, audio clip. We were just on radio at the time. We weren't doing video shows a few years back when this was played. And Dr. Battar was there at that one, and so you had medical, osteopathic, allopathic, homeopathic. I spoke there, naturopathic. Chris Barr spoke at that one, talking about 100% whole foods, selenium, for instance, and chromium and silica and other things. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Not a Nurse and Not a Doc group on Facebook, it's a great resource for those of you who really want to go all in on 100% whole food recoveries. And there are many, and they do work. But you have to be of the mindset to do what needs to be done. Annie Brandt did that and a lot more over the course of the years beyond which the oncologist would said she should be dead, right? And we don't get out of here alive in terms of the physical body. I'm not telling y'all anything you don't know. Spiritually, we don't die. We live on. I'm confident and comfortable with that. I mean, I like I said, I feel no sadness for Annie being where she is. Just sadness for us who lose a friend right here in this physical incarnation at this point in time. So I want to acknowledge Annie Brandt and Super Don. Do you have that clip ready we can play from the advance? Oh, I'm sorry. I keep saying that because Batar was there too at one point. The best answer for cancer. Okay.
Got it.
It's only about a minute long, but just a brief little bit. We can hear her voice talking about what she was doing. And she, again, what a bright light. She smiled. She had her little Chia pet with her, right? A real living dog, Chia pet. And just a beautiful soul. And we dedicate this show to you, Annie Brandt, and all those who love and appreciate you and all that you did while you were here with us. And may your work continue, even as you operate in the spiritual realms now, exclusively.
In the sunshine of San Diego. And if it couldn't get any brighter, it just did, because Annie Brandt showed up from the Best Answer for Cancer. What a bright light you are, Annie. So good to see you here.
Thank you for having me. And I feel the same way about you. You are a true light.
Oh, gosh. And then we had Chris Barr here with his beard. We're reflecting off of it, too. And the light's just amazing. So you really brought together, and this is not the first year this has happened. It's the first year I've attended, Chris as well, brought a lot of doctors that really do want to learn, that are eager to learn, and they really sincerely want to help folks, it seems.
That's what I really, really like about integrative physicians for the most part, is they're very curious. They're always curious. They're always learning. They're always looking for new ways to help people. And as a former patient, well, I guess everybody's a patient. As a patient, they just knock socks off. I mean, quite frankly, the difference is amazing when you go to a conventional oncologist or MD, and then you come to one of their clinics, and the love and the care and the actual reaching out to the person.
To hear her voice, again, the light that she brought, the joy that she brought in the midst of, again, difficult challenges that she had, Super Don. And again, I want to think about this because also when you think about at a conference, at one conference, a presentation, you think about our buddy Chris Barr, right? No joke. Hardcore, 100% whole food nutrition, no bending, no break, nothing like that. Dr. Batar was there. Other integrative physicians were there. I was there. And it's like across the spectrum, she brought people there to learn. And these doctors were open to learning all of these things. And then there was also a side of the conference that was open for the lay audience as well. And like I said, it's just not easy to put on one event, much less multiple events, and get CME credits and continuing education units and such. And it's just... Look, we continue to carry on all of these missions the best way we can, and that is to bring information to you so you can make better informed decisions about how you want to move forward in this life, what you want to do to protect your health or reverse a health condition that could be considered scary, the big C diagnosis, for instance. And just, still it's surreal anytime you lose someone, a friend like that. And a real hero in that sense.
One quote that I remember from, because I was listening to some of her stuff this morning, that the organization and the event that she put on was called Best Answer for Cancer, and she said that the best answer for cancer. Do you know what the answer to that question is, or what that is? Mm-hmm. And she said that it's whatever works for that individual.
Yeah,
that's the best answer for cancer. Which I totally respect that, because it's not there are some things you can say, okay, yes, this is like the basic, things that you need to do. But, every individual is different, and things are going to work differently for different people.
Well, and that is, I think, a fundamental philosophy we share here, Super Don, you and me and a lot of folks, that we have perspectives on life, of course. We've had experiences in life that lead us to believe certain things, lead us to live certain ways, do certain things, don't do certain things. But as her answer was so illustrative of, is that we are each on an individual path, whether it be you consider back home to God, an individual path here in life, whatever that path is, and that includes a path to healing. We were on an individual path to even disease creation, unbeknownst to us, whether it had been set up emotionally due to abuses in childhood that we weren't aware of or don't remember, or whether it was to be poor food choices or vaccinations and all of these things that we acknowledge here that contribute to the downturn in our health, or at least the challenge to optimal or vital health. And to have an answer like that, what is the best answer for cancer? Whatever works best for you. And that's and we may disagree with it, but the point is, I am all in on supporting people on their path, as long as they're not destroying other people's lives in the process. And I'm not saying that, let's say, losing a loved one doesn't, quote unquote, destroy somebody else's life. I mean, we're destroyed emotionally for a while if we talk about it in those terms, but that's not what I'm talking about. We still don't have the right to force people to do what we want them to do, or stop them from doing what we don't want them to do, if we honor one of the most fundamental freedoms that we've been given by our Creator, and that is the freedom of choice, the freedom to choose. And we'll do our level best to educate folks, to maybe even disabuse them of what we would consider wrongful perspectives on things, but I'm never going to get in the way. And if I do, Super Don, you slap me down, of somebody's freedom to choose or not choose. That's the thing here. And Ann was great about that.
And this is, my take on things has evolved over the years as I've gotten older and more experienced and things. And, there are all kinds of different ideas that people have out there, or modalities, right? For healing. And, a lot of them I don't understand. I'll be honest. I know nothing about them.
I thought you understood every one of them.
I know. No, I mean,
dude, there's so much out there.
It's very easy to be judgmental, right?
Yeah.
And be like, whatever. Come on. But if somebody was sick and they use that modality and they're cured, who am I to say that it doesn't work? I mean, it worked. Obviously, look, it worked.
Something happened, right?
That's all that matters. And, as far as I'm concerned.
And there can be people that will go, well, how did Annie die of cancer? I thought she was like doing the best answer for cancer. Look, she survived 20 years. I don't know how many years at this point that she survived beyond the death sentence, so to speak. And what we forget, perhaps, is that our physical bodies are not necessarily designed to last forever. I agree that they're designed to last a lot longer than most people's do, but we have a lot that works against that in terms of mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical. But we know at the end of the proverbial day, she lived her life. She had a great mission. She brought a lot of healing to a lot of people, a lot of great information, empowered a lot of people. And I don't think she wasted a breath while she was here to try and do the great work that she did. And, so if anybody, and I'm not saying people are saying that, oh, look, she didn't have the best cancer, she's not alive anymore. I'm like, dude, do you understand what it takes to survive? If you didn't know something and you've been given that diagnosis, how hard it is to come back? And it can be done. But even then, longevity, everything else, she did amazingly in that time that she had. And a great example for those of us or any of you who get a scary diagnosis, and you can turn that around not only for yourself but for others. And I'm not saying everybody's role is to become an activist and start a conference, but good Lord, there are worse things to do. That was a pretty amazing thing that she's done. A lot of people, she touched a lot of lives there. So Annie Brandt, God bless you. Thank you for blessing us with your presence here on the Robert Scott Bell Show. And as a friend, we will miss you, and eventually we'll all be reunited. But at this point, again, we will continue in the spirit with which you did so much wonderful healing, Annie, that you brought to the world, and light that you brought to the world. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, again, today's show, obviously, Super Don, dedicated to the memory of Annie Brandt and Best Answer for Cancer. And as I said, we have Marjorie Wildcraft to look forward to in hour 2.
Yep.
Y'all had asked for her, like when we asked at the turn of the century. I'd say that turn of the year.
Turn of the century?
Yeah. Who do you want us to get on? Well, Annie Brandt was a big, I'm sorry, and I still got Annie on my mind. We'll have all day, but Marjorie was one of the ones you wanted. And
we had a number of people that said, listen, you guys ought to talk more about homesteading and gardening and stuff like that. And so, my thought was Marjorie Wildcraft, she's a rock star when it comes to that.
There are so many dynamic, powerful women that are changing the world here, right? I know we're a couple of guys, right? You and me. But, yesterday's show, dude, how awesome was it to have Diane Miller, one of my health freedom heroes, on in her new book, Health Freedom, The Greatest Freedom of All. That book, I tried to get her on 2 weeks prior when we were together at the Advanced Medicine Conference. Didn't work, so we had her on yesterday. It was a great interview. I hope if you missed yesterday's radio broadcast, please, it's available at all the archive podcast sites, robertscottbell.com/listen as well. And that was wonderful. And again, the theme, of course, of powerful women today, between yesterday, Diane Miller talking about Annie Brandt, and of course, Marjorie Wildcraft. We do have a couple of upcoming events I should let you know about. Super Don is updated from the notes. You can go to upcoming events, and you will see. Let me see if I can pull this up for everybody to see. We've got 2 big ones this very week. In fact, tomorrow, all about issues with 5G and EM fields. What you can't see can and likely will hurt you. And what you should be concerned about, but what you can do. More importantly, what you can do so you don't have to be a victim. Hosted by our good buddy Trevor King, and that's happening Tuesday, June 15th. If you're listening live, you've got a day to sign up, I believe. No, what day is this? Oh, it is. It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yep.
4 p.m. Eastern time. But sign up, because if you don't sign up, even if you can't attend live, you won't be able to see it at all. So at the very least, you're not under obligation to do anything but learn. You're obligated to learn. See how obstinate I am? How dare you, Robert, make me learn. Also, on the 17th, this Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, also hosted by our good buddy Trevor King, a live online class with Q&A about hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, water, and 2 great opportunities. Of course, those of you who've been waiting to remedy these things, they always offer special deals for you for being a part of that. So if you haven't signed up, again, sign up. It's free. At the very least, you will learn something. At the very least, you'll learn good things. Then we've got other upcoming events. And, of course, remember, the big one, October 2nd and 3rd, 2021, Tinley Park outside of Chicago, the Health Freedom Expo. Again, a little bit more. We've got links up to Annie Brandt, as I said, from Best Answer for Cancer. All right, our first official story we got to cover today is a story about the Texas judge tossing the hospital workers' lawsuit against mandatory COVID-19 shots in a lawsuit. And it's like, oh, well, if you don't want the shot, you can go work somewhere else. Well, let's hear how the news was reporting this right now.
In a major blow to more than 100 unvaccinated workers suing Houston Methodist over its COVID-19 vaccine requirement, a federal judge has sided with the hospital, dismissing the lawsuit. Nurse Jennifer Bridges is the lead plaintiff in the case.
This does not get resolved in 1 week or two. This is going to take a while, but we will definitely push it as far as we can.
Bridges is one of 178 employees suspended last week for not getting the vaccine. The federal judge ruled the hospital's policy is not coercion. The order of dismissal says Methodist is trying to do their business of saving lives without giving them the COVID-19 virus. Quote, Bridges can freely choose to accept or refuse a COVID-19 vaccine. However, if she refuses, she will simply need to work somewhere else.
We're okay with this decision. We are appealing, and this will be taken all the way to the Supreme Court. This is far from over. This is literally only the beginning.
How is it not coercion? How does somebody get to be a judge and not know the definition, the legal definition of coercion? You get the shot or you're fired.
You have the right to accept it or not accept it. We're not saying that you have to get the vaccine.
But coercion,
But if you
you want
don't,
to keep your job?
You got to work somewhere else.
Yeah, and you think about these nurses, frontline, quote unquote, in the COVID crazy year. How many of them got it, right? We can converse about what it is, and have naturally occurring antibodies or
doesn't matter.
immunity. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Dude, the science doesn't matter, and coercion is not coercion. Where did this judge go to law school? Explain to me how you get the shot or you're fired is not coercion. I agree, it's not a mandate per se to live because you could still be alive.
Mandate by proxy, though. I mean, it is.
Well, exactly. I mean, again, these judges don't impress me much. Now I've got to sing the song. No, I won't sing it. Just to save everybody. So, are they going to, throw it out, say it was frivolous, right? Frivolous. I got a job as a nurse, and you're going to just fire me? I've been on the front lines doing all your work for you, and now you're saying I have to get a shot even though I have naturally acquired immunity to whatever it is you say I had or didn't have or doesn't matter? Safety, my aspirin. They're not into safety. Go ahead.
But Houston Methodist is ready to move on after what it calls a frivolous lawsuit. CEO Dr. Mark Boom released a statement saying we can now put this behind us and continue our focus on unparalleled safety, quality, service, and innovation. He says he's proud that all Methodist employees are now vaccinated. Bridges, on the other...
I'm going to stop that right
Oh my
there for
gosh.
just a moment. But that out of this entire news report, because I mean, this is basically a follow because we covered this on Friday.
Yeah.
This Houston Methodist situation. Mm-hmm. But don't you just love that where it's like the CEO's like, I'm very proud of the fact that everyone working at Houston Methodist is vaccinated. Well, that's because you fired everybody who wasn't.
There's one way to get 100% compliance, right?
I mean, yeah, how easy is that, right? If you just fire everybody who is doing something that you don't like, then you've got 100% compliance.
I love that they could say that with a straight face. It's kind of like Obama saying, look how many more people are insured.
That's exactly what I thought of, too. It was like, everybody loves Obamacare because look how many people are signing up. Well, it's because you forced everybody to. You told them if you didn't, you were going to get them a fine.
Yeah. But you're so proud that you coerced, once again, coercion, the way of government. Force, the way of government. The way of government bureaucrats, and in this case, private companies, hospitals, for instance, that wouldn't know the science if it bit them on the aspirin, in this case. All right, continue with this clip.
Bridges, on the other hand, already has another nursing job lined up. And she says even more former employees are ready to join her fight.
The support is just amazing. So that is a huge victory right there. People are tired of being pushed around. They want to stand up, and they're getting more courage, and they're getting braver as the time goes on.
Well, that's a good sign if that's true. More and more hospital people. I want to hear more doctors step up against this as well. I mean, think about what they're...
I wonder how vaccine compliance is in North Korea.
Yeah, it's really good, I hear.
I have a feeling it would be.
Yeah. You don't take the shot, you get the shot. Right? Oh, look I'm so proud. Kim Jong-un. Look, we've got 100% compliance with the vaccine mandate.
Everybody must love me because they're doing what I say.
It's not a mandate. You don't have to get it, but if you don't get it, we're going to shoot you. But this judge in Houston would probably say that's not coercion either, right? Just insane, dude. Now, again, the hospital system is so corrupt based on Flexner Report medicine. This idea that you can poison people to health or poison them to protect them, but it's actually poison for profit. I'm not against profit here, but I think that violating fundamental freedoms, rights, and immune function is not a great way to, start and engage in business practices. But the allopathic church of pharmaceutical mysticism is all about what? Fear, coercion, corruption. The third leading cause of death, arguably the second and or first, modern medicine. When do we grow up, boys and girls, in the Western Hemisphere at least? When do we grow up and recognize the medicines of creation are the actual medicines that can protect us and that can reverse the course that we've set ourselves down on, at least since the Flexner Report of 1910. I would say it goes obviously further back than that, when we made the worst mistake of our lifetimes, following the criminal Louis Pasteur instead of paying attention to Antoine Béchamp, the genius of geniuses in the scientific realm throughout history, introducing us to the concept of the terrain, the milieu, or the environment being the determinant factor in health or disease. And that germs that we have said, oh, scary germs, we got to kill them first. That those things were never the cause of our problem. They, in fact, are the life-sustaining elements, if you will, life forms when we talk about bacterial, fungal species, etc., that keep us alive, keep balance of nature as well. And viruses, oh, lovely viruses. Once they got the electron microscope, they said, oh my gosh, look at what we found. Never catch them in the act of actually doing anything that they can validate, and then everybody's scared, and suddenly they're giving up on their divinity, their freedom, and their health autonomy. And including those who have gone in for the right reasons into the medical profession, whether it be nursing, physicians, etc., now have to accept it's not coercion. You got to get the shot, the jab, experimental, still undergoing clinical trials, or else you lose your job. But it's not coercion. Don't you dare call it coercion. Who cares if you got the stuff already? The World Health Organization has changed the definition of herd immunity, which is absurd. But herd immunity is also absurd. Oh, no, don't go there, Robert. Too late. I'm going there. The concept of herd immunity is garbage anyway, and I say it this way. Because in the midst of, let's say, some kind of massive outbreak of an infection, you might call it, it burns through. Some people might die. Many people may get sick, but some people don't. And then it's done. And then we say, now it's herd immunity. It's a collectivist agenda to basically take away your autonomy, your individual nature. Whether you got sick or did not rely upon the herd. It didn't even rely upon exposure, because it either did or it didn't happen. It does or it doesn't happen. Whether the group gets sick, which is a nonsense statement, that individual got sick, that individual got sick, on and on it goes. That one didn't, that one didn't, that one didn't. You didn't. It didn't rely on something called herd immunity. You don't have a herd immune system. You have your own immune system. She has hers. You have yours. Herd immunity is a collectivist construct made to distance you from your divinity, your health, sanctity, and sovereignty. And the WHO said herd immunity can only be acquired via injection, via vaccination. Experimental gene therapy in this case, with COVID-19 jabs. But herd immunity is a misunderstood concept to begin with. It's an individual construct in terms of health or disease, regardless of whether you're exposed to something or not. There's no guarantee that because you're exposed to something that you will even manifest one symptom. What did we find out during the time of COVID crazy? 60 to 80% of the people that are exposed to whatever they say it is never had a symptom. And of the 20 or so percent that had symptoms from mild, moderate to severe, who died? And where's the proof that they died from? One virus, gain of function improved or not. PCR, that's your proof? The technology that has not been validated and standardized to identify an acute or chronic infectious agent and should not be used to diagnose ailments, illnesses, much less predict them. Kary Mullis, Nobel Prize winner, developer of PCR. That's your proof? Oh, now we're doing spit test, antibody test, or we're taking a variation of a nasal swab. We'll swab your anus, not the planet. And we'll tell you everything about you. Really? This is embarrassing. And I say that with all the love in my heart, doctors, nurses that are still following through on this. You should be embarrassed. You're smarter than that. Or maybe not. Maybe you're just more programmable than you and me and Super D. We're still pretending that they were right about anything about COVID. Repeat after me, boys and girls. The virus is always a cover story. The virus is always a cover story. For some other hidden agenda, and I said many times now, the agenda is not so hidden. It's all about getting everybody to acquiesce for the love of gene therapy. mRNA injections or adenovirus injections that are designed to what? Somehow reprogram your genetic sequences to manifest spike proteins that they hope will elicit antibody responses that will then may or may not make you immune to something that may or may not even have been isolated. Most likely not in the definition, the true definition of the word isolation. It's been manufactured. And if you believe what they've manufactured is the thing that's causing all of this, except in everybody that doesn't get symptoms even though they're exposed to it. Now we realize the vaccine is the plague. The shot is the plague. The mRNA injections are the plague. And that was the play from the beginning. You've never needed a real virus. These are invisible, only identifiable by electron microscope. And even that is in dispute in terms of their imagery. Is it really that? And if so, how come you can't just pull it out of the blood or bodily fluids and show it right then and there? Oh, no, it doesn't work that way, folks. It doesn't work that way at all. As they say, if I was a doctor, medical doctor, physician, or scientist, PhD in this realm, and I still was buying this, one day I'd wake up and go, dude, I'm embarrassed. How did I ever fall for this? And I'm not saying I've never fallen for things and I still might not fall for things. That's not my point. This is not an ego-driven, let's say, perspective that I'm throwing out at you. It's tough love to some degree. It is, because it's not the most gentlest of messages, I recognize. If I say, doctor, you should be embarrassed, people would say, well, that's not very nice, Robert. No, but it's very true. And in order to wake up, it may be very necessary to recognize that you've been duped, you've been played, and you're following along with a program that has been pre-written before you were even a doctor. And now with the pharmaceutical and vaccine mRNA horse blinders you wear, you will not look at, can't conceive of, or see anything but what's in that narrow vision that they fill you with. And so if you're confronted with information that causes a dispute to even the common sense brain cells you may still have functioning, then you go into cognitive dissonance and you shut it down. You yell and scream, put your fingers in your ears. You call it fake news and you go, government, please save us. Fauci, please save us. Zuckerberg, censor these people who dare to bring up inconvenient facts about what I am trying to tell everybody. They're saying the opposite. They're not playing along with us. Well, why would we? When you're wrong about so many things. Now I'm talking about the allopathic medical profession on the issue of COVID and what we call COVID crazy here. Now, there's a little bit of, let's say, controversy on our side of the equation, too. We go back into the show notes here. Let me bring them up at robertscottbell.com. And after the Texas judge tossed the suit, they'll probably keep going as long as they have funding. Anti-vaccine activists are using a federal database to spread fear about COVID shots. See if I can pull that story up here. This is being reported via NPR. What does NPR stand for, Super Don?
National Public Radio.
Isn't there a better description of what they really do?
What's your version of it?
I don't know. I hadn't thought about it till the second.
I don't have one popping right off the top of my head, but
yeah,
we could probably come up with one.
Oh,
actually, let's throw it out to everybody else.
What does NPR really stand for?
What does NPR really stand for?
Yeah, if you're in the chat room at robertscottbell.com/listen, or if you're watching on some of the social networks that's still available to us, let me know what you think NPR really should stand for. Here's the headline: Anti-vaccine activists use a federal database to spread fear about COVID vaccines. By the way, congratulations to Djokovic. Remember that guy, the tennis player? He just won the French Open. He slayed it, dude. And if you remember Djokovic, I think he's from Serbia. He's one of the few athletes speaking up going, dude, if they make me take the shot, I'm not playing. Right? We talked about that over the course of COVID. He's like, no way. There's a smart dude that recognizes his bodily autonomy and says, I'm not going to be a science experiment or an anti-science experiment as it is with mRNA injections. So cool that he won the French Open. He's slaying it. So what is this story about? VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's the only system managed by, I think, both FDA and CDC to monitor patterns of injury potentially that are emerging from vaccine administration. All right. So it's acknowledged to be a government-run, let's say, database. And epidemiologists, according to this article, consider this as only a starting point in the search for rare but potentially serious vaccine side effects. And we've talked about the controversy of establishing cause and effect links via VAERS database. Here's the quote from William Moss, Executive Director of the International Vaccine Access Center at Johns Hopkins. He says it's a very valuable system for detecting adverse events, but it has to be used properly and it's ripe for misuse. Really? Really? It's ripe for misuse? It's just that now more people than ever know about it. Why? Because there's been a cult-like fervor to get everybody shot up with an experimental, gene injection without it having even completed clinical trials. And when you look at the study design on these things, they didn't even bother to consider, let's see one of the parameters here. Let's see if we can make sure that after we give the shot that they can't spread whatever it is they're claiming is being spread. That's not even one of the parameters. Let's see. Did we put a parameter in to watch and see? Let's see if we can prevent the most severe cases that are leading to severe hospitalization, ventilators, and death. Nope, not in there. Let's see. Are we going to monitor the safety of participants, particularly females, for changes in the female cycle? Now, we can't be bothered with that. So fertility is not even in the discussion points of concerns for. We don't even look at it. And what we've come up with as an idea is that we're going to design this thing to find out if we can prevent mild cases or make them less severe, mild, moderate, maybe. And off of that, they said we're all going to die unless we take the shot. That's still undergoing clinical trials and will be for another year or two at least. And so they're saying the VAERS system is ripe for misuse. No, what's ripe for misuse is the clinical trials that are not even completed. And claims they're being made by doctors, scientists, lab researchers, the media, government spokespeople. Yes, even Donald Trump. Oh, I said it. There, I said it. So what they're concerned about is that people who are very awake and aware that vaccines can and do harm and kill, they're actually saying that anybody who is not a vaccine fanatic is misusing this by saying, look at how many thousands of people are dying because of the COVID shots. Now, how have we reported on this here on the Robert Scott Bell Show? Is it fair to acknowledge that over the span of time since COVID shots came on the market via an emergency use authorization, the VAERS database has reported more deaths following the shot or shots than the previous now 20 plus years of VAERS database reports. And on those prior to the COVID shots, it's on all of the vaccines. And in the 4 or 5 months now since these shots have come to market, again, not approved, not licensed, not standardized, is like, yep, we've got it. We know it. The trials are done. We're good. Even if we might dispute that, we would probably. But it hasn't been done. And in that span of 4 or 5 months now, in the first part of the year 2021, more deaths reported after these shots than all deaths combined to all shots prior 20 years. And then maybe more years than that now. It keeps going up. Fact? Yes, that's a fact. But what NPR and others would like you to know is that just because it appears in the VAERS database doesn't mean it's a causal relationship. Oh, I know, it's temporal, right? You get the shot, every one of these deaths is a coincidence. Every one of them. Now, how we've reported is an acknowledgement that I agree the reporting through VAERS is not evidence of a definitive cause and effect relationship, but it was designed, as they acknowledge, to identify patterns that are emerging. It's important. They acknowledge it's important. And yet these patterns that have emerged, more claims of death after the shots in 4 months than 20 years. Is that not a pattern that should concern you? And all they're worried about is that people that don't like vaccines or have questions about them are exaggerating or making claims that they can't substantiate. What they should be concerned about is, my gosh, there is a pattern that has emerged here. We need to get our ass in gear and look at that. Instead, deflect, distract, and go, oh, those anti-vaxxers are at it again, claiming things that aren't here to scare you. Like, dagnammit, if you're not a little bit concerned about that pattern, you might already be dead. Now, bring in my trusty sidekick. Could I call you that? Or are you also a superhero there, Super Don?
Sidekick?
Yeah. That's not a demotion. That's not what I'm saying. But your critical thinking skills intact, right? We talk about this all the time. When we reported on the VAERS database and these numbers, do we put a disclaimer? We say, we're not saying, we don't know. It's awful suspicious. The patterns that emerged, that's what they say this is for. And they're going, no. We need to worry about anti-vaxxers taking these numbers and going, this is, I'm like, really? You guys should be doing your dang jobs. And going, that is a pattern that is unusual. And of course, you acknowledge in the peer-reviewed medical literature that maybe 1% of these things are being reported, maybe as much as 10% at most, which is really frightening when you look at those numbers.
And what I'd like to know is how many of these things are actually being investigated.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is probably the most important detail.
Yeah,
that's missing here. And you pointed out, you reminded me this morning that Children's Health Defense had filed some kind of,
they submitted a series of questions about that very
and stuff
thing.
like that, and asking about that specifically.
What are you doing?
Who looks into this?
Mm-hmm.
How many of these are investigated? Where are the results of the investigations? We want to see this. I think that's very important. For years, this thing's been around, VAERS, and we've talked about it, and a lot of other people have talked about it and stuff. But that one particular detail has never come up. They point out in the article that, we made this transparent because we felt it was very important that we be transparent. Transparent. Well, what's not transparent is what's going on with the data.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys doing with this data? You say, well, the reason why it's there is, we go in there to look at things that need to be investigated when we notice patterns. Well, a third grader could take a look at that data and figure out that there's a pattern. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, who gets to decide what pattern is worth looking into and what pattern is not? Show me the money here, right? It's like, what's going on? We need to see what's happening with this VAERS thing. They just want to dismiss it outright.
That's the point. That's what I see by NPR. Yeah. By the way, people are the most common answer to NPR, national propaganda radio. And I think that's
there was one other one I thought was clever. Not possibly relevant.
That's good. That's good. But you are so right, and they are so wrong. What are they doing with this pattern that has emerged?
Where's the transparency?
Yeah, except screaming and yelling at us
Right.
for pointing out that this pattern has emerged. That's the point of the whole thing.
And you made a very important point, is that we're not saying that everything that's in the VAERS system is caused by the vaccine. We don't know. All we know is what's being reported.
And the pattern is frightening.
You said, critical thinking skills. Mm-hmm. So let's use some critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Is it unreasonable to assume that if you took I think it's up to like 5,000 something deaths at this point that are in the VAERS system, that statistically, a certain percentage, the bigger that number gets, the less likely it is that every single one of those deaths is just a coincidence. Okay. It's just numbers. Okay. It's just math. The bigger that number gets, the less likely it is that you can say that every single one of those deaths was a complete coincidence. There has to be some number of those.
They seem to be forced into accepting that possibility only with recently, as we've been reporting.
It becomes more and more ridiculous the bigger that number gets.
Yeah. But
you know
where
what?
I'm going?
We could clear the air on the whole thing if they would just show us what happened. Show us the results of the investigation. Right?
Well, they haven't answered Children's Health Defense, or we would know. But remember the kids, the young people, myocarditis, heart inflammation. They finally are going, oh, well, maybe we ought to look at this. Because it's not as easy to say, well, these kids probably would have had heart inflammation even if they hadn't got the shot. That's not just something that happens every day.
Listen, is it possible? Of course it's possible. But let's talk about what's probable. And in this situation with the myocarditis, they're taking this very seriously now. And everything that I have seen so far, and I've been following this, is showing that there does appear to be a link. So now they're just going to go from it was just a coincidence to, well, but it's not really that bad. Yes, it's easily treatable.
Yeah.
It clears up on its own in a matter of just days.
You should just risk heart inflammation in your young people. That's right. And, look, how many thousands of families were affected that we learned of through the Vaxxed movies, right? These are not real. These are not real people, right? They were never listened to. They were chided, derided. They were yelled at and screamed at. Parents who brought up, hey, my kid was fine, and then the shot happened. These were before COVID shots, right? Same scenario. Do you think there's an internal inherent bias of the allopathic, pharmaceutical shot death cult? Yeah, I said that. Do you think there's a bias? Because they've been trained, they're horse blinders, to say anybody that says there's a link between vaccine shots and fill in the blank are wrong. They're kooks, they're quacks, on and on. They're pre-programmed to automatically say there's no link. That's their default statement. That is not a scientific basis to start with. It's let's open up our minds, our brains, and say, let's look at the possibilities. Let's look at everything. You inject foreign proteins. You inject toxic poisons. That's different than ingesting them. That's different from inhaling them. And we are dealing with cultists, Super Don. We are dealing with cultists now on this issue. You took off your headphones. Was I yelling? I'm sorry.
No, I was trying to hear something.
Okay. I was like, uh-oh, I got Super Don's ears going. We are dealing with cultists blinded by propaganda rather than those. And again, I'm not saying that people on our side more aligned with what we think are not also exaggerating, saying every one of those deaths reported to VAERS is caused by and it's proof of. Look, there are people doing that. But look, there are people that are very angry and upset, and rightfully so. I'm just trying to say that the pattern has emerged. This is designed to identify the patterns, and they're doing their level best to disidentify patterns, to pretend they aren't there when they are. And that's the starting point. Where's the middle point and end point here? Are they doing anything with this information other than acknowledging the myocarditis issue? All right, with that, let's go to a question of the day. All right, this question of the day is coming from Chris. It says, hello, RSB and Super D. I asked a question in December about my friend who cut her wrist in the shower. She lives near Seattle. Her hand is better now. She does follow your advice. I don't advise. I give information. You guys get to do with it as you will. She did physical therapy also. She recently had an electromyography to assess damage to the nerves, and the doctor said her median nerve doesn't appear to have recovered to any measurable degree. And she has low-functioning right ulnar nerve with evidence of collateral sprouting suggesting some small measure of continuity. Is there anything else besides surgery that can help? Thank you for your answer, Chris. Chris, read The Body Electric by Dr. Robert Becker. You'll recognize the role of silver ions that they play in regeneration of even neural tissue. So silver, bioactive silver hydrosol, the Sovereign Silver or Argentyn 23, I would not want to be without. Other things that help facilitate neural regeneration and health include essential fatty acids, healthy omega-3s, but even saturated fats from healthy sources are critical for brain and neural functioning and tissue integrity. Cannabidiol, the endocannabinoid system, plays a role in nervous system health and regeneration. CBD. By the way, you go to cbdnf.com and get the 100% Whole Foods certified organic full spectrum hemp grown in America. cbdnf.com. Sign up and they'll send you some samples, and then you can take a picture with you and the samples. We'll get you entered into a drawing to win some. That'll be fun too. But go ahead and get some CBD. What do we got? Is this another picture here? Who's this?
You just reminded me that we had another entry that came in over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Tanya.
Tanya not only got samples, but she bought the gummies and a 1 ounce organic CBD hemp extract. Beautiful, Tanya. And she's excited. And she's also entered for taking the picture and sending it in. Thank you.
Love the picture. Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah. So further in answer to Chris on this question of the day, I mentioned silver, but the trace mineral silicon or silica is critical for brain and nervous system and neural regeneration, much less neural integrity. So if I go here, by the way, there's the banner for the full spectrum hemp extract oils from Nutritional Frontiers, cbdnf.com. RSB15 is or is it RSB is the code? I never remember. It's just RSB15, I think. They get 50%.
RSB15.
Yeah, thank you. We got Trinity School. Choose to be healthy. Let's go to Choose to be healthy right now and find the silica, the Alta Silica. Excuse me. We'll hit shop here. And it'll take us in there, and we'll go to, let's see, does it have Alta Health Products? I click on Alta Health Products. We get the Canjest, and we get the Alta Silica. And so for neural regeneration, that's like a really loading phase scenario, 3 tablets 4 times a day. So you're probably going to get a few bottles to get through that and really regenerate neural tissue there. RSB5 is the discount for choosetobehealthy.com, RSB5. By the way, those of you who are concerned that innate response, they can't get the selenium, Mega Food is the same thing. It's just a smaller bottle or 6 count. Oh, is it the chromium? But I think the selenium now too.
Is it the selenium too?
Yeah, I think that Innate discontinued it. But I know.
It was the chromium at first.
Right. I think selenium too. We'll get Chris on to confirm that. But they still have it. The Mega Food, same quality, but lesser per bottle. Yeah, you could still get that. All right. So we have is the next thing a question of the day as well? Yeah, I think it is. All right. So let's go back to, this is Gladys. Hi, Robert. I saw you at the conference in Sioux Falls during Memorial Day weekend. You made a comment. Let me back up to Chris as well. Remember Cardio Miracle for nitric oxide? That opens up micropore circulation, so that's going to also help in regenerating nerve tissue. All right, Gladys says, hi, Robert. Saw you at the conference in Sioux Falls. That's Advanced Medicine over Memorial Day weekend. You made a comment that if you knew what you know now back when your father was still alive, you would have helped his kidneys more. Yes. She says, my brother was diagnosed with FSGS. Have you had any success with this disease? His doctors have him on numerous amounts of medications, and for the last 4 years have wanted to start him on dialysis. Is this something you can help with? Can he set up an appointment with you? I don't know if you're still seeing patients. Please advise since the time is of the essence, and we are very desperate. Thank you, and God bless you. Gladys, did she say where she is? We met at the Sioux Falls event, but I don't know where she is. No. I would say, what I was talking about with my father was the kidney failure. And part of it, as I've learned, of course, is blood flow to the kidneys being corrupted. And he had vascular issues, right? He had triple bypass, before some years before. He only did about half of what I told him he should do. My mom still here with us in her late 80s doing, just trudging through. I mean, she's been challenged recently too, but she does all these good things and is strong and alive because of it. But knowing what I know about nitric oxide production, had I had molecular hydrogen, nitric oxide. Of course, I had him on some of the selenium and the chromium stuff, but I don't know how he was as far as really religiously taking it. He probably wasn't. But yeah, the kidneys, I would do also. Dr. Christopher says a kidney formula. I would be drinking dandelion tea, eating dandelions every day, and homeopathically doing what I talked about in the Clinical Homeopathy 101 Plus lecture for Trinity School of Natural Health. That is down here below everything. We usually have it right there. There it is. Clinical Homeopathy 101 Plus. I give you some homeopathic remedies for the liver, kidneys, colon, elimination systems. Helping the liver will help the kidneys by definition. Cangest tea is also helpful. These are things that are very, very readily available for you to bring the power to heal back to you where it belongs. And I appreciate you asking the question. You can submit questions as you do. I don't typically officially take patients. I do consult with doctors about their patients to help them, and usually try to direct you to people that can help you. So let me know where you are in that regard. But I would definitely want to increase nitric oxide, get the hydrogen going, get the selenium in them. Connective tissue issue is also there. That means silicon. And all the basics apply, but more critically when you're dealing with potential for kidney failure and hemodialysis. All right, finally, we got a skull and crossbones thing. What's this all about? Medscape is reporting that this sign has been given to those who are not getting the COVID experimental shots in rural India. Police in rural India have made some citizens who have not been shot up against this coronavirus crazy stuff wear signs with a skull and crossbones, the universal symbol for danger, stoking anger in a country where shots are in short supply. I mean, how bizarre is this? We didn't learn anything from the 20th century. I realize, Super Don, that a lot of people were killed, and they were killed by governments in the 20th century and throughout our history. But the standard that we know of in the 20th century that we bring up, it's not the only one. Again, there are many slaughtering scenarios where governments have taken out millions of lives, of course, was the most visceral to me, with my Jewish heritage, World War II Nazi Germany. The Stars of David, the yellow Stars of David put on.
And the use of that analogy has really, really caused a lot of chaos. I mean, a lot of reaction. We covered that story of the lady that was selling the patch or whatever like that. But apparently in India, this is crazy. If you've been vaccinated, you are given a sign that has the colors of the Indian flag and it says, "I am a nationalist." And if you haven't been vaccinated, they give you this sign that has a skull and a crossbones on it, and it says, "Do not come near me. I am not vaccinated. Please stay away from me."
Wow. Well, what does that tell you about India? India, this is a country steeped in herbal traditions, steeped in Ayurveda, a place where homeopathic hospitals exist, and yet even there, the allopathic sorcerers have found a way to dominate the culture, and I don't know that this is everywhere, but come in and make you wear something horrific and horrendous. It's like putting a warning label on a carton of cigarettes, and they're saying you're equivalent, tantamount to a carton of cigarettes by putting a skull and crossbones on you. How horrific is that? But how horrific is the cult of modern medicine that they would actually endorse this, or anybody in any country? You're suddenly a danger to others because you don't accept an experimental jab that alters DNA expression to produce spike proteins that are arguably shedding and harming other people? Talk about inside up, upside down, all wrong. Talk about Luciferian schemes. That's why I'm so glad in hour 2 we're going to lighten it up big time. We're going into the garden, y'all. We're going to have a great time growing healthy things with our new friend, Marjorie Wildcraft. And she's standing by to join us in hour 2. I'm so excited about that. So stand by, take a brief breather, and we'll get everything set up for hour 2 as we go to the garden with Marjorie Wildcraft and bring the power to heal and grow back where it belongs with each and every one of you.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.
All right, here we go. Second hour of the show goes forward right now, and I'm very excited about what we're about to do. Super Don, remember like when we put it up at the end of last year, beginning of this calendar year, crazy COVID year, like, why do we have to keep talking about that C word? Enough, right? And we put
Can't
it out
help
there.
it. I mean, we
Yeah.
kind of have to.
We were
but-
like, every year we put it out. It's like, hey, what do you guys want us to do more of, less of? That? And they're all like, more gardening, more gardening. And Super Don, you said, how about Marjorie Wildcraft? I said, yeah, that would be awesome. But we had to go through her people and her people and her people. No, and her plants. Her plants had to approve us.
To be fair, the Grow System Summit
Yes.
just ended. The Encore just ended just recently, and we had a number of people actually that got plugged into that. But Marjorie's been really, really busy. I've been talking with her assistant, and it was just like she just had so much going on. So this is the first opportunity that we've had to get her on. We've been trying for a while, but we had to cut her some slack because she had a lot happening there.
She's a busy one. Yes, right. And joining us now on the Robert Scott Bell Show from the Grow System Summit and so much more. It's Marjorie Wildcraft.
Yay!
Yes, this
Hey,
crowd
Robert,
goes
thanks for having
wild.
me on. Hi, Super Don.
Hooray! Hooray! You know what? We have been. I was a city slicker growing up out of New York City, right? As a kid, and we moved to Florida like a lot of New Yorkers, way before it was like they do it now because it's crazier than ever in New York. And I didn't grow up growing things. It was like the miracle of the supermarket or the fast food, right? And it's like food just magically appears. And one of my dearest friends who's no longer on the planet with us, unfortunately, Liam Sheff, wrote a book called Official Stories. And he, in his last couple of years of his life especially, he became very intensely focused on growing. He says, my gosh, this is the biggest issue of any issue out there. You guys got to start growing. And he really stimulated my green thumb, which was hidden. It was hidden. And it came out. Yeah. And I began to start growing. And it's been a great joy to my life. But also something as vitally important as anybody. You want to talk about healing the sick? How about feeding people that are sick because they're starving, right? And getting food back into the system. So I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I know you're passionate about it. I just wanted to share a little backstory and why I'm so excited, among many reasons, to have you on today.
Yeah, malnutrition is the elephant in the room. I mean, Americans are large, but they're not healthy and they're malnourished. So yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of reasons, and there's a lot of things that can be solved growing your own food. There's a lot, like the whole mental health crisis. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately where the real solution to the mental health crisis. People know in their guts the supply chain's broken, that we're headed for inflation and hyperinflation, that being able to eat is going to be like the new currency. We all know the dollar is going to collapse. New currency is going to be the calorie. And they know that, whether they know it consciously or not. And that's what, the whole mental health crisis is really all about, is people realize that this is big.
Marjorie, in the history of humanity, we look back, even in the Bible, there are stories about famines and people going hungry. And more contemporary history, there are so many points in history where people just couldn't eat? What? We have been living in an artificial reality fueled by the burning of oil that produces basically, as Liam said, we all have slaves. It used to be humans that were slaves. No, oil became our slave. So that even sometimes, let's just say the poorest people in America don't actually have to grow their own food. Even we would argue what they're eating is subsidized non-foods, but you know what I'm saying? They have calorie access. And we are living in that point in time where that may not be the case forever and a lot longer. This is the unusual part of history we're living in. And I don't know if we're trying to get that message out.
Yeah, this last century has been magical, right? It's been like magical thinking. And you're absolutely right. In fact, the Victory Garden movement was started back in the early 1900s, like 1913 or 14, in response to some food shortages. And it was a grassroots movement by people. Most people think of it as the U.S. government, but the U.S. government only came in later when it became a big enough grassroots movement. And it actually started prior to World War I. But famine has been a very natural part. And what has prevented that for the last century or so in the United States, it's definitely been occurring in other places around the globe, has been that we've learned how to essentially eat fossil fuels. Now, they're not healthy foods, as you well know, but we've learned how to eat them. Right, you basically turn fossil fuels into corn or soybeans. So yeah, and sometimes I've got to introduce you to Christian Westbrook, known as the Ice Age Farmer, and his whole thing is how they're actually engineering. So like I heard your last hour where you're talking about COVID. Well, they're engineering a famine is what's being done right now. There's all kinds of supply chain issues. There's all kinds of crop production issues. Corn, there's a huge drought going on in the Midwest right now. So corn supplies are going to be down, but we've already sold a bunch of corn, all of it, almost that, and the soybeans to China. Almost everywhere around the world, global food production is down. So we're going to be having the F word.
Yeah, you want to control a population, starve them. And say, you know what? You want to eat? Here are the rules.
Mm-hmm. Get your injection.
Go get your shot, whatever it is. And of course, the lawyers and the judge will say that's not coercion. I mean, they just alter the definition of everything, as we've talked about here. And I don't want it to be a doom and gloom discussion. That's not our intent to have you on. But we need to have a rational, sober recognition that the miracle of the 20th century was brought to us by oil. This brought everything to our doorstep. We didn't have to grow food. We do have to grow food. And people say, well, no, I don't. I can still go. Well, by the time you realize you have to grow food, it's too late. It's so late in the game. And the point is, start now while you have the opportunity to start, so that when and if and when, then you have some semblance of functionality. You don't have to rely on FEMA coming in to give you foodstuffs as long as you accept an experimental injection to alter your DNA.
Well, here is the really, really, really good news. And I also, like you, I did not come from a hippie family that was living off the land, and I really didn't grow any food as a kid with grandparents or anything. And then I got into, I got my degree in engineering and then in business. I never had a background in it. And what happened was later on in life, actually, when my kids were young, I was volunteering on a food to table program where we're going to try and get locally grown food into the school. And that whole project completely failed because there was no locally grown food. And we're in Texas, outside of Austin. And I'm like, which is a progressive area. And I was shocked. And it changed my life completely, actually. I had a nervous breakdowns. I was up all night with nightmares, shaking involuntarily. I lost a lot of friends and relationships. But here's the thing. Because, I realized, there's only 4 days worth of food in the grocery stores and the just-in-time trucking. And most of the things that people are becoming aware of now, I was very keenly aware of. And I said, well, I'm going to learn to grow food. And here is the incredible and magical thing. It healed me on so many levels, not only just on the physical level of getting really deep nutrition, being outside in sunshine with clean air, doing something meaningful, but it healed me on the mental level and the spiritual level, the emotional level. I mean, knowing that I can provide for myself and my family, it just totally takes the edge off of any kind of COVID experiences or cyber attack, or any of the other events that we're currently living through. It totally takes the edge off of that because I'm like, I have a level of immunity from it. So it really, really healed me. It's an incredible journey. And
you mentioned mental health issues. Just being out and getting your hands dirty, connecting with the planet that we live on, electrically even, but from a soil-based microorganism, microbiome, everything. We realize that another aspect of the failure of what we call allopathic medicine is the view that everything in nature is our enemy and we have to kill it first. Of course, we're killing ourselves in the process. And recognizing that being in that environment, breathing it in, it lifts the spirits. It's just, I don't know. I feel so, giddy. I'm out there. I'm like, it's mushrooms? No, I don't know. I'm not doing mushrooms. the point is, of course, there's mycelium in the thing that's good for it. But all of these things we talk about, well, no, we need to put you on this or this drug or this, or even from a supplemental perspective. I acknowledge the role of deficiencies in manifesting any kind of aberrant physical or even emotional states. But the remedy is getting back out in the garden, with the land. That's a big part of this. Yeah. Well, a huge part of all disease is malnutrition and toxicity. And you totally have control over that, even in an apartment or a condo. But here's the other really good news. So I spent a lot of time. I knew that there would be a crisis. I knew there would be a whole bunch of people that would want to suddenly start produce their own food, and they would, being humans, we would wait until the crisis came, right? We would not prepare. Mm-hmm.
So I really spent a lot of time drilling down, like, what are the most calorie efficient crops that you can grow? What are the most nutrient dense crops you can grow? And how can you grow this as simply and as quickly as possible? And here is the really, really, really the drilled down numbers is you can grow about half of your own diet. So I'm talking about producing, on average about 1,000 calories a day or more, assuming you have a 2,000 calorie a day diet, that's half of your diet. And it really will only take on average about 1 hour a day. So a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'm going to grow my own food. I'm going to have to be dedicated. I'll become a migrant worker. No, it's not true. Believe me, I've been doing this for the last 2 decades. I have been producing at least half of my own food. I've, been raising my kids, homeschooling my kids, creating a business, running the Grow Network, being a wife, being involved in my community. I'm just as busy as everybody else. And I still manage an hour a day, and I love it. And to be honest with you, it's not 1 hour every day. Sometimes on the weekends it's a couple hours, and then during the busy week, it's only 5 or 10 minutes. It's really not that much time to produce a lot. I think the biggest myth people think is it's going to take up their life entirely, and it's not. It's really pretty simple and easy to do.
Although you tend to, when you're out there, you're like, why do I want to go inside again?
Right. Yeah, right.
No,
yeah.
I recognize also where you are is part of that. I grew up most of the time in the southeast of the U.S. And so a longer growing seasons, by the time I was learning about it, I was getting used to that in Florida in particular. But obviously at most of the year, high humidity, a lot of bugs, different challenges. Now being out west in a desert area, I had to relearn a shorter growing season, what's unique about the soil in my area versus what I used to do, all of these things. And I always say, find people that have tribal knowledge in your area, because, when I see the things like your videos, and we played them here, not every bit of those things grow everywhere, right? So we've got to take the knowledge, apply the basic principles that will be applied everywhere, but then find people that are doing what you're doing wherever you live right now.
Yeah, we're actually we're creating a thing called Your Place on Earth, which will help you define, there's 30 different ecozones that are good for identifying what grows there. And we're currently coming up with a project to divide all of our content and everything into those 30 ecozones so that people all over the world can find where it is on their climate and growing season and dial right into that. So it's something where we should have that implemented in the next month or two. But you're absolutely right. Now, I've grown in Central Texas, which is an extremely really harsh environment to grow in. And I've grown in also Western Colorado, which is very similar to where
high desert type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, high desert. And now I'm in Puerto Rico, which is another completely different bioregion. Quite frankly, I love the contrast because you learn so much more. And people often ask me, what is the best? And every area, as you were saying, has their challenges. I will tell you one thing for your sake about the deserts. If you have water, and you definitely are going to have a more narrow time frame for planting, and you got to be on your schedule. But I found deserts are actually surprisingly easier to grow in because you don't have the insect pressure, you don't have the weed pressure, and harvesting and all that is usually pretty straightforward. You don't have to worry about did it rain or did it not rain. And you can do seed saving. Actually, a lot of the seed companies want to produce seed in more arid regions because then they don't have as much of a problem of getting the seeds and drying the seeds. Right. So the desert has a lot of great advantages to it.
But you're right. The water is the issue, and there's a lot of droughts happening. We've got to be very frugal and efficient in our use of water. That's why, I connected with a man who modified what's known as German hugel culture, where they do get rain, and modified it for the unique environment of dry, low water so that we can grow with a lot less water input. And it's just brilliant. It's so fascinating what you can achieve with people that learn the hard way. And I say, find those people, pay them. They're worth their weight in gold because you won't have to take 10 years to figure it out and starve to death learning something that someone else has already learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugel culture is such a great technique. There's also oyas, which are these ceramic pots that you can bury in the ground. There's, even aquaponics is, even though it's a little more high tech, it's incredibly water efficient. There are lots of techniques for everywhere. I think the key thing is to start doing it and be surprised. You'll plan on being surprised because not only are you going to produce delicious food, but you'll find yourself calming down. You'll find yourself healing. the nutrition alone is going to blow you away in how much better you feel. And right now, our immune systems, your health is your number one asset. As we watch the dollar deteriorate, are you right? Like 25% of all the US dollars that have ever been created in history, 25% of them were created in the last 12 months.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and they're not going to stop. You know what I mean?
They can't stop. No.
They can't. No, I mean, we're never going to pay that debt. The only way out is going to be to blow this thing up. But that means basically your dollar has lost at least 25% of its value, if not more, in the last year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we are looking at some serious things that are on the planet happening right now. And really, growing food is such a simple thing that you can do. It restores sanity. It restores your health. You'll connect to the divine. I mean, I don't,
I'm with you. I totally get it. It's spirit filled. The amount of grass that's grown that cows and other things are not eating, that you're just mowing down. What is that? We were sold this by post World War II, chemical munitions were converted for fertilizers, as we know, and it went into a lot of different directions. And so it's lovely to see green in the desert, but my gosh, it's not efficient regarding unless you're going to plan to eat your grass, you better think about what's happening. And I say, grow food, not lawns. That's not my comment. Others have said it better and many times over the years. But converting, as we're doing, steadily, slowly, but every year, converting more of the grass that we're not feeding to the cows because we don't have any. Well, they're out back in a field. But the idea of converting that land that you have, even if it's a small plot, it's amazing how much food you can grow in certain ways, doing it efficiently, learning from someone like you, Marjorie, or others that are in the area. That I don't want people to be intimidated about that. Oftentimes, I can't do it. No, you can. Everybody can. Don't tell me you don't have a green thumb. That's just an old tape playing.
It sure is. And there's a lot about it. By the way, so I've got a book out. I got to get you guys a copy of the book.
Definitely.
Right. This is The Grow System, The Essential Guide to Modern Self-Sufficient Living, from Growing Food to Making Medicine. And in here, I have a very simple 3-part system on how to grow half of your own food. And, if we want to talk for a minute about what are the most calorically dense. Well, let me step back for a second. In terms of lawns, lawns are the United States' largest irrigated crop. And I forget how many millions of acres there are in lawns. Now, we do grow a lot of corn.
Is it more than farmland if we add up all the lawns? Yeah. I'm thinking, how much food can we be growing? We would not be phased at all by the collapse of the dollar, the oil, whatever. It was like, no, we're all growing our own foods. We're all doing Liberty Gardens.
There are more irrigated lawns in the United States than there are irrigated crops. Now, we do have other dry land crop situations, but there's more irrigated lawns than irrigated cropland. And those lawns are, they're already irrigated. Most of them have enough sunlight. I mean, we could immediately, and we've done it in the past. This is a really hopeful thing. So during World War II, during the Victory Garden movement, 20 million novice Americans within the first year started producing 40% of the produce that this country ate. Wow. That's huge. Yeah. And it happened like, boom, overnight. People started tearing up their lawns, growing food. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. And we can do that again. There is definitely that kind of resiliency in the population. So I'm very, very hopeful. I mean, and then of course, all throughout history, and pretty much everybody grew food, right? Like, so your great grandparents, you're all the way back. Like, so this is, and they did not have Google,
No, they had tribal knowledge and family history. And, look, and what you're doing is fascinating too, because that concept of wildcrafting as well is working with what has been there for perhaps thousands of years. And instead of ignoring it, not learning from it, it's like, my gosh, we've got food, we've got medicine, we got all of this stuff that we trample on or spray and kill. We're killing ourselves doing it. And so that's also the lost knowledge, if you will, that you're also helping to bring back, which I'm so grateful for.
Look, let's go into some of the most calorically dense things that you can produce. I think that'd be very useful. So when people ask, the 3-part system for how to grow half is a small garden. And I'm only talking about 100 square feet, which would be 2 garden beds that are maybe 4 feet by 12 and a half feet, right? That's pretty small, right? 2 of those. So you'd have a 100 square foot garden bed. And a flock of hens, 6 laying hens. 6 laying hens will produce about 1,500 eggs in a year. That's something like 95,000 calories right there. And then the other is a home rabbitry. And 1 buck and 3 breeding drows will get you. I was doing this in Central Texas.
What
about
did you call it? A home rabbitry? What?
Rabbitry. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have a buck and 3 breeding does, and they'll produce. And this produced in Texas, where we had to take out 5 months of the year because it was too hot. I was producing about 75 rabbits a year, and that, we're talking about 235,000 calories of meat, bones, organs, all kinds of stuff. I recommend people start with, unless it's the perfect time to start a garden, which it often isn't, start with the laying hens. Build a coop, build a run. I would recommend you buy some hens that are already producing. They start producing in about 6 months. A good laying hen will lay about 250 eggs a year. Once you've gotten them settled in and figured out how to water and feed them and take care of them, and they've kind of settled in, I mean, really within just a couple of weeks, you'll be producing breakfast every morning.
It's pretty impressive. We have some neighbors. We haven't done that yet, but that's right. We're talking calorie dense. And as far as the rabbits, I've said this about most people, and maybe it changes when they're hungry, but most people, when if they had to grow their own protein, animal protein, they become vegetarian. A lot of people can't think of doing it because it just magically appears in the grocery store. They didn't have to involve themselves in any of that level of production. But if you don't want to, let's say, kill an animal, you have eggs. My gosh, you're not killing any animals per se.
Yeah.
You got easy access, and anybody can do that. And
it's a great complete food of protein,
correct.
Fat, minerals. So I ask people, what do you think the chick is? Do you think it's the clear part, or do you think it's the yolk? And actually what it is it's a little tiny speck in there that's an embryo, and the yolk is a food sac.
Right.
And the white part is mostly protein. And that food sac is enough minerals and vitamins and everything that is needed to turn that into an amorphous blob into a little chick with beaks and eyes and legs and enough energy to last first of all, to peck out of that shell. By the way, you should never break the shell open for them. They almost never live if you do that. They have to go through the process of breaking their cells free. And then they usually have 2 or 3 days worth of energy to be able to figure out how to peck and follow mama around. So that egg yolk, I mean, if it has enough energy, nutrients, and everything to do all that,
right,
that is a superfood. So
right.
really,
check in on Super Don here before he nods off here.
I'm not gonna nod off. What are you talking about?
I'm just thinking the chickens and the eggs. I mean, are you ready to do something like that? I mean, I'm listening to you, Marjorie, and I'm like, let's see what Super Don's feeling about what we're talking about here, because it's like,
Super Don, are you a vegan?
I am most definitely not a vegan.
No, he's not a vegan.
Okay, good. Yeah.
No.
But the thing is, I've been encouraging. They finally have a place where they have a couple of raised beds for the first time since we've been doing our things for over the years. And the importance that he knows. He's been with me through the Liam years where we began to talk about that. And my journey into gardening has been something we've featured on the show. And I want to feel from a Super Don perspective what you're receiving in terms of the information, different layers and levels, because it's not like it's new, the discussion, but the details that Marjorie brings to it are so valuable.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, a lot of the videos that we've been playing on the show have been, these homesteading basics and stuff like that. I mean, there's just lots and lots of great information coming there. But yeah, I mean, for somebody like me, I've got these little raised beds, and I've grown some vegetables. I've done some container gardening and stuff before. So I'm not too intimidated by that part of it. Now the chickens thing, I don't know. That'd be a whole new thing for me. As far as raising chickens and dealing with chicken poop and I mean, it's like I don't have any teenagers. I don't have any teenagers anymore to do that for me. So
you'd have to be doing something. But I've watched like my neighbor on the other side of the fence. They had put in like a year ago, and they went out for the Easter week on a holiday, and they handed me this tray of 30 eggs that had come. They're like, we were not gonna be able to eat these. You want them? I'm like, oh yeah,
God, beautiful.
The most beautiful, rich, deep colored yolks that you can't. Even the organic stuff you buy in the grocery store is not like that. And I was like, and I occasionally, like, I had more kale than we could eat last year. I would feed them kale. I felt like I'm contributing to healthy chickens, and so it paid back eventually. And I saw what can be done, and it's become somewhat self-sufficient. I watch what they do after getting it started. Now it's running itself basically. It's not as scary, as intimidating as I thought, perhaps.
No, not at all. In fact, I was a raw vegan when I started this journey. But I was living in Central Texas, which is an extremely harsh environment. And it became a matter of practical, like, how am I going to be able to eat and still live a life? And eggs and meat became like that
Right.
is much easier to grow than vegetables.
So we got calorie dense, protein dense. We got hens and rabbits, if you will. What other on that list? You said there were a number that we should hit first for everybody.
Well, I think the hens are the easiest thing to start with, and they're most amenable. You're not going to be killing anything. You're just collecting eggs. You can get, once, spend a couple of weekends building the coop and run. In the book, I've got the diagrams and everything for what you need to build, the exact amount of space, how to do it, how to protect, what kind of feed, and the whole thing in there. And then, when it gets time to do the garden, get your 2 garden beds going, and you really don't need a lot of space. One person, like I said, you really only need about 100 square feet. And then for most people, I'd say tackle the rabbitry third, because, a lot of people are like, gosh, I really don't want to kill a bunny. And I totally get that. And in fact, if there's ever a time when you're looking forward to killing a bunny, you need to go get psychiatric help. It's like, it's never fun to do. But
no, I remember the scary scene from what was the Fatal Attraction at the end? That was horrible.
Ooh,
But
I didn't see that.
Oh yeah, no, you don't want to watch that with Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. I remember that. The last scene, Super Don. You remember that?
I don't remember that.
Oh, good.
No.
Well, I don't want to bring up traumatic memories from the movies, but again, there was a bunny involved. It was not pretty.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't need any more bad news. There's
No.
enough reality that's hard to take.
Yeah. Forget I said anything. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah. So the rabbitry, and I get it. I get it. But also, a lot of people have seen me butcher a rabbit. I used to do it in live back when we did things in live, and then it's certainly recorded in enough places. And I've had a lot of vegetarians say, you do that with such honor and respect for the animal. I totally get that I could do it if I had to. So, and really, to be honest with you, the rabbits, there's so many, really, I think it's like 235,000 calories from 75 rabbits. The hardest thing to produce in a garden or in a backyard system is going to be fat. And your rabbits are going to be the best chance of producing a lot of fat. And again, the chickens with the egg yolks are going to be the best source of fat.
We just picked up a couple of walnuts trees where, grow some nuts, which have some healthy fats in it. If you're in an area that can do that, you can look at the source. Obviously, it's not an instant thing, but this is the planning ahead, trying to create a food forest scenario as we move forward here. It's not just about immediate. It's about planning for the future, too.
It's a retirement thing. Yeah. Yeah. Food forests are fabulous. It's like it's kind of like an investment, a lot of upfront work in the first couple of years while you're getting that little tree going and you're taking care of it and you're nurturing it and you're protecting it. And then after a few years, it's producing, and then your workload reduces significantly, because then you're really just down to pruning and caring and harvesting. So
we walked into a mature, what is the apricot tree? I'm like, hundreds of apricots. Oh my gosh, they're so good coming right off the tree. And we were gifted by one of our super fans, Allison. She's amazing. One day, this big pallet showed up, and it was this Harvest Right freeze dryer. Like,
oh my gosh!
So we've been able to. It's an incredible gift, and I'm so grateful. And again, so we were able to take something that might be wasted because you can't eat enough. And I don't know how to can yet. That's another aspect, canning as well for preservation. But the freeze drying was amazing as well. So there are other things that we can do. It's not that, I eschew all technology or advancements. It's trying to use them appropriately, not for harm, but for health and help. And again, looking at that. Now, we have a question coming in from Kathy C. Does Marjorie have anything in place to protect what she grows from marauders?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for the two-legged kind, I have an AR-15, but and a Glock 19. But I haven't had any problems with two-legged marauders yet. But absolutely, the chicken coop that I recommend and the rabbitry that I recommend, you shouldn't say, do I have raccoons? You should say, where is my nearest raccoon?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have all night, every night. And I've got
trying to
tons
target
and tons.
those chickens and rabbits.
They're going to figure it out. And I've got plenty of the night camera footage of the raccoons just circling and circling. So yes, you absolutely have to build a chicken coop that is predator proof. And you're going to really want to take care of them during the day. I keep them in a run and then occasionally let them out in an electric fenced area.
Mm-hmm.
Or for a while, I had a free range flock where I had dogs that would patrol the area at night. But predators are an issue. Living here in Puerto Rico, it's funny. I'm here like they don't have raccoons on this island, which is incredible. Although they do have other things, but
Sure.
Iguanas. Will eat your garden overnight. And I'm like, what do we do about iguanas? And they said, if you get an electric fence and you get one strand that's about 2 inches off the ground and you run this one stand, then it stops the iguanas. And we were visiting a local farmer and he had this one little strand that was 2 inches off the ground protecting an acre of crops. And we were laughing at him. And he was like, no, that's what you got to do. It just looks so funny, because normally, by the way, electric fencing really works. In Texas, I went to a place called Coyote Creek Farms where they were raising pastured meat and chickens and pastured eggs. And they had electric fencing everywhere. And it was called Coyote Creek because it was just loaded with coyotes. And I was talking to the farmer and I'm like, well, you really picked a spot to raise chickens. And he goes, yeah. He said, electric fencing is magical. He said, I've really just seen the coyotes sitting outside the fence drooling, trying to get in. I'm like, don't they ever jump it? And he said, they just never do.
Wow.
But they touch it with their nose and they aren't touching that fence again.
Not happy about it. Yeah.
And you can get those fences with a battery and a solar panel, electric fencing is like one of the things that gives your average homesteader or average backyard producer now a huge advantage over people 100 years ago.
Yeah. Nice. Well, all right. Let's see. Jama City 507 asks how to grow shaga mushrooms. Are you doing any mushroom growth?
I have not done. If I get them in a kit where you drill it and you put the stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done a lot of wildcrafting of mushrooms because I'm really super nervous about that.
Mm-hmm.
But mushrooms are an incredible food source. I really recommend it. That they produce. You got that whole meat equivalent type feeling.
Yeah.
They also have other nutrients in it that are difficult to get. And they are pretty dang easy to grow. I've seen people growing them in Florida, of course, Oregon, and most places. You can grow mushrooms, so definitely a great food. So you can turn a log into food, basically. So
yeah, exactly.
That's good, right?
Oh, it's great. I love it. Now, your book is available. Where do you want people to go to get your book?
Go to MarjorieWildcraft.com. And when you go there, there'll be links to the 5 big booksellers. Penguin Random House is the publisher, but they'll be available on Amazon, on Barnes & Nobles, Google. So if you go to MarjorieWildcraft.com, the book will be all the links to the best booksellers will be there. And I would super appreciate it if you would give me, of course, I need a 5-star review. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's worthy of it. I'm looking at, the grownetwork.com website as well. And we have, again, we were able to promote the event. And hopefully, a lot of people from the audience did participate and very, very grateful for that. And I think, Superdon, did you say you have a link in the show notes to it as well, that even though they missed it, they can get it? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's actually embedded in the show notes that, if you happen to miss the live event, you can actually go over there. You can actually get, I think there's several different packages.
Here it is. We got the link. I see it.
Yeah.
All right. So it's not too late to replay the entire event. Watch it again from the. So even if you missed it live, I just clicked on it. It takes you to the Grow System Summit. You can select whatever package you want to get. And so you have access. And there's your book in there. Is that also... It's the Grow System.
That's a part
book.
of the package.
Part of the package, yeah. So if you're thinking about getting the book and you get the whole setup of what was taught, wow, this is great. Okay, I'm glad that you made it available.
Did you guys see that presentation with Dave Asprey in there? Superdon, did you get to see that?
I didn't get to see that, although we did. Dave Asprey actually was a guest on our show several years ago. He's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what blew me away? So he's like he's got this thing where he wants to live to. I thought it was 180 years old.
Yeah,
now it's
180. Yeah.
And I think he's even going for 200 now. So what people don't, that guy lives on 35 acres and he grows all his own food.
Mm.
And actually he says he's got enough money, of course. He has a whole farm to table a restaurant that he's supporting because he wants his community to be strong. And he's like, yeah, pretty much every centenarian that's ever been interviewed, they grew some or all of their own food for most of their life.
You don't find that many city slickers that grow nothing at that age. That's true.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So if you want to live to 100, start growing your own food.
Yeah.
There you go.
Simple setup. You got to do it. You're not sure how to start the grow system. We've got links up, and we'll continue discussing these topics with you. And Marjorie, again, finally connected officially here on the show to, like I said, inspire the folks out there that maybe, I've heard it from you, Robert, enough. Let's hear from Marjorie, right? I'm like, I want to hear from her too. This is awesome. So
good.
Do you have any other events coming up, speaking events? I know that they made it a lot more difficult to travel, so I haven't done as many as I normally would. Most of us haven't. But if there are any events that you're going to be going to, we certainly want to let people know about it.
No, actually, I was hoping to go to the Red Pill Expo with Edward Griffin up in South Dakota, but it just got to be too much crunched on my schedule. I am doing a huge media blitz. So if anybody else out there is a podcaster, we're really promoting the book. And we're trying to make the book a New York Times bestseller, which is like kind of a really long shot. But I'm like, look, it's so important. It is so important. As you and I were talking, Robert, and Don before, like if the Patriot movement is going to survive, we've got to have our own food supply.
Yeah. We don't want to eat lead.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, right.
We've got to prepare for these things. And again, this is not us with some fatalistic, apocalyptic desire or fantasy. Honestly, it's not. I'm not thrilled about having to talk about these things, but I recognize in my lifetime I didn't know pretty much any of this because we grew up in an era, Super Don, you and me and Marjorie, in the 20th century where none of this was, you didn't have to concern yourself with any of this unless you were like a hobbyist or it's just something you'd love to do. Otherwise, you're like, food, it just magically appears. As I say, folks, you got to recognize that in the history of the world and people on it, the anomaly is the 20th and 21st century. That's the exception to every rule in history. And it's not me wishing that it happens. That it's just how long can they sustain the unsustainable? And I think I'm asking a legitimate, critical thinking type question to conclude what I've concluded, that I and we have got to do better. We can't just expect FEMA is going to save us if a food collapse or, a supply chain collapse happens. We saw how bad it could be like after Katrina. That's just one element of it. But this could be everywhere all at the same time. And forget it. All bets are off at that point.
Yep. These last two cyber attacks that were so heavily publicized, the Colonial Pipeline, what people don't realize is there's only 4 days worth of food supply. And if those semi-trucks can't get fuel to get in and get out, the food stops. And that would have been the whole East Coast. And the other one, is JBS, a meat packing plant. Like, if that stops, ta-da. Yeah. So, this is not something, and again, I also don't want to go into gloom and doom, but at this point, we got to just talk reality of what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a story here, and I'll just have you a comment on it as well. It says 7 in 10 young Americans say they've had health self-awakening during the pandemic. I'm thinking, well, that potentially could be positive, I guess, but what does that really mean? And according to the Study Finds report, let's see, what have they learned to do, these young people? Let's see, I'm going to scroll down. Okay, here we go. Common health blind spots, routines. They learned to do yoga. Look, yoga's great, but it's not going to feed you. You're drinking a smoothie and green juice. Okay, what if you go to the local health food store and they don't have the greens to make the smoothie, right? Okay, working out, that's good. Meditating, that's fine. I don't know what this doing a face mask is. Super Don had to explain that to me. I'm like, aren't they tired of masking?
Oh, come on.
What?
Jeez, don't you have a wife, you have a daughter, and you don't know what a face mask is?
I don't know. They don't put face masks on, or I don't know.
Oh, is that when you put the stuff on your face?
Yeah.
See, nice. I
want
to
see Marjorie knows about it. How do you don't know about it?
I want to do that. Yeah, right.
But my point is, when I hear face mask, I don't think of that anymore.
I know it's coronavirus ruined the whole term face mask for everybody.
It's not a guy thing.
No, they didn't.
You should be proud. Yeah.
But I'm saying that
I've got
these
daughters and granddaughters. I know what a face mask is.
Yeah, the young people, if they're really discovering what they call self-care, health-care, if they don't get back into the garden, their lives are not going to be long and happy. And we've heard stories about the young people are not going to live as long or as healthy as previous generations. There's a lot of reasons for that. But we're talking shortening it even more. So young people, you got kids out there, grandkids, they listen to the show, families get together. If you're not out in the garden, I mean, you should be raising these kids so that it's a normal part of their lives. It was abnormal for me, and now I love it, but my gosh, it should be part of every kid growing up. And if you're into public schools, I'm not, but if you are, every school should have a garden and have these kids in there. More important, I would say, even than reading, writing, arithmetic, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things, but if they don't eat, it doesn't matter that they can read and write and do math.
Yeah. We could lose the ability to read and write in about 2 generations because that's how long it took to lose the ability to grow food. It only took 2 generations. So, but it's way more vital and way more important. I would also say, I've done a lot of, I'm kind of on one of the last baby boomers to get squirted out. And I've had a lot of interviews with baby boomers. And I say, what's your favorite memory of your grandpa or your grandma? And it was never we went to the ice cream store, or we went to the movie, or we went to the skating rink, it was never that. It was always something like, well, we harvested eggs together. We collected eggs from the chickens, or we pulled up carrots, or we dug potatoes, or we got lettuce. Every single one of the best memories was involved somehow with actual harvest and food production. Coming from something real, coming from the ground. So I would also say those are going to be the best memories that you'll ever make with your grandkids.
I want that for Grandpa Super Don to be like, I want them to say, I remember when Grandpa Super Don was taking us out into the raised beds and we got the food and we ate it right there. We ate a sprig of lettuce, right? I remember taking my kids when we were first learning about this back in Georgia, especially my son, we would go to an organic garden or big farm, if you will. And they say, go out there with the kids. And suddenly the kids were like, oh my gosh, they picked this stuff and eat it. And it was like memories that were created in that regard that they still talk about to this day. And with my grandpa, it was about inventions. He was a real inventor. And so, I didn't, but again, they were city New Yorkers, right? But he still did innovative, creative stuff. And it's not the end of the era of innovation, inventions. I think that's another aspect of focal pointing on things we can do with our hands that we can build and repair and keep going. The people of Cuba, I'm not a big fan of communism, but because of the embargo and the shutdown, they know how to keep things running from the 1950s by making it themselves. Like